World leaders gathered at the G20 Summit in the Russian city of St. Petersburg failed to settle their differences over the U.S. push for military action against Syria in the wake of an alleged chemical attack. The first day of the summit on Thursday was overshadowed by the conflict as President Barack Obama tried to garner international support for the military campaign amid Russian opposition. In New York, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Samantha Power, says there is no doubt that Washington has given up trying to work with the UN Security Council over the attack. She said there was no viable path forward in the Security Council and accuses Russia of holding it hostage. Beyond convincing Russia, Obama has a tough sell ahead elsewhere. China, another veto-wielding Security Council member, has already expressed its grave concerns over unilateral military strikes. And the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon later told the leaders at the summit that any military action must have the Security Council's backing. Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, said that they cannot accept U.S. proofs of chemical weapons used in Syria, and they are far from being convincing, he said. On the line with us live from Washington, D.C. is political director of ABC News, Rick Klein. Can you hear me, Rick?
I hear you, yes.
Rick, what is the situation like right now in Capitol Hill?
It is a tough sell for President Obama. He has asked the Congress to go along with his plans to go ahead with a military strike in Syria, and he does not have the votes right now. The Senate is looking difficult. In the House of Representatives, a majority has told us that they're opposed to military action in Syria, and that would make any passage of a resolution impossible. So, barring the president being able to change some hearts and minds in the coming days, he would not be able to get the authorization that he's seeking to go ahead with the military strike.
Is the probability that he will get congressional approval or not?
Well, he's got time to make the case, and I think most folks still believe that there's too much on the line for the president for it to be possible that he not get it. But he is losing the PR battle around it right now. There are town halls going on around the country where members of Congress are hearing almost unanimously from their constituents that they don't want military action in Syria. That's the backdrop. That makes it a hard case to make. So I think people still presume that somehow he will get the authorization he's seeking because there is so much on the line, but it's not clear how that happens, how we get from point A to point B.
The Senate Foreign Relations Committee this week passed a resolution allowing the use of force against Syria over the August chemical weapons attack. Now, albeit with restrictions, and more votes are expected. Do you expect an answer or an attack to happen next week, or could this take more time?
I think it's going to take more time. I think at the best case scenario, the best case timeline for the president would be that the Senate votes next week. The House most likely not to vote until the week after. So I don't think that any potential attack could happen for at least a few weeks at this point.
Rick, a lot of analysts that are talking about this and writing about this say, well, does the president know that in the limited military strike that's supposed to take place, he's actually fighting on the side of Al-Qaeda? Can you comment on that?
Well, I think that one of the concerns that the members of Congress have raised is that it's hard to define the Syrian opposition, and that right now the Assad opposition includes elements of Al-Qaeda. So if you're weakening Assad, are you strengthening Al-Qaeda? That is a legitimate and real concern that's being voiced right now. And I think everything that's happening now in American politics is colored by the memories of the Iraq War and the fact that we had the faulty intelligence on the front end and that we weren't prepared for the reaction on the back end. And I think that experience has a lot of folks in Congress skeptical about how easy and how quickly
the operation about the Iraq War, they went in claiming there were weapons of mass destruction and afterwards said, well, we were wrong. And right now, as it stands today, does Obama have proof 100% that it was Assad's fault, the chemical weapons attack?
No, and they're not saying that they have 100% proof. Secretary
well,
Kerry
but they can still launch a military strike without 100% proof?
I mean, are you asking me a legal question, or are you asking me a practical question?
No, practical question. We'll get the lawyers on that one.
Sure. I mean, as a practical matter, the way that Secretary Kerry has cast this is that if he were prosecuting a case, the case would be beyond a reasonable doubt, and he believes that they have a case. beyond a reasonable doubt, based on the fact that there is no question that Assad has chemical weapons, that there are stockpiles, based on the locations where these attacks took place, based on the damage that happened there, based on the capabilities and who had command and control of the weapons. They don't believe that there's any serious case that can be mounted that suggests that it was someone other than the Assad regime.
But what about the UN report then? The UN investigators that were on the ground to investigate the attack on August 21st, the report, well, according to them, is not going to come out for another 2 to 3 weeks. So isn't that even going to take a role in his decision, perhaps, and wait that long?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that is going to be one element of the opposition to doing anything about this, is that you don't have a UN report back yet. The administration doesn't believe you need to wait for the United Nations, but some of the president's critics, even at home, believe that the right thing to do would at least be wait for the international community to come back and then decide how you're going to respond.
Right. Here's another question that everybody's asking is, people are always speculating about the consequences, right? They don't know. I mean, the American government is saying this will be a military strike, yet the consequences nobody is really sure of. What are you hearing in Washington about the possible repercussions of an attack like this?
The possible repercussions of an attack, I think there's concerns about what you're doing in the region. There's concerns about what the unintended consequences are, that you're obviously getting involved in a civil war in a very volatile region. How is Israel impacted? How does Iran respond? How do the Syrians respond? How do the Jordanians respond?
Right. Well, let's talk about Iran and Israel for a second there. Could this be the door to a possible Iran? How will Iran and Israel respond to this, do you think?
I have no insight on that whatsoever. I know that Israel is likely to stay out of any direct activity that's going on there. But if they're attacked, I'd imagine that they would respond. But I have no insight into that, and I certainly have no insight into how the Iranians would respond. Okay,
all right. Is there any fear in Washington that this could have, perhaps, that the Iranians could retaliate if Syria is attacked? I mean, we've heard the president of Iran be vocal about it and warn the United States against the attack. He said that there would be some grave consequences. Are they speculating in Washington about what those could be?
Not in any degree of specificity, but in the general sense of you don't know once you get involved there, you don't know what the response is going to be, and it could be unanticipated. It could be much more dangerous than you think. And there's others that are making the opposite argument, that are saying that if you don't respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons, you're emboldening the Iranians, you're emboldening the North Koreans, you're sending a message to leaders around the world that the U.S.'s word and commitment to upholding international standards doesn't matter. So
no matter what, he has to respond, right? No matter what there has to be some form of response.
That's the argument that's being put forward, is that to not respond would be a sign of weakness and a sign that the United States is not making good on its word.
Okay. What do you expect? Congress is resuming on September 9th. Do you expect a vote next week, or do you expect maybe more deliberations? I mean, the president, from now till then, he has about 3 days, the whole weekend, and we've been hearing that he's been very active, him as well as John Kerry. They've been very vocal, and they've been really lobbying to try to get everybody on their side. How's that looking right now?
I think that we're likely to see a vote in the Senate next week. I also think we're likely to see the president address the nation in some public forum from the White House, maybe an Oval Office address, something along those lines, early in the week to try to build public support. But it's not clear that it's there right now, and that's where the president's challenge is going to be, to try to convince the people, try to convince the Congress that this is something that needs to be done.
He's got 3 days to do that. Do you think he'll be able to do that?
I think he. Right now, 3 days is not actually describing fully what's going on. Once they're back, that's not the same as actually voting on it. And the vote could be delayed. The vote could be late in the week. So I don't think the time frame is quite the way you describe it. I think he's a little more flexibility, but it's still going to be difficult.